Perfect. So, welcome, Dulwich fans. Thank you for joining us. We're here with Jordan Winter and Mark Marshall, basically players at the first team for the men's team. We're just going to have a little bit of a discussion around Black History Month 2024 and what it's like to be a black player in 2024 and some of the life and lived experiences that we've had. So, thanks for joining. I just want to open up the forum. Let's get the conversation going. What would you say the challenges are? The barriers for men and boys, black men and boys within society and football. I'll go to you, Mark. Go on, Marshy.
I think society kind of stereotypes us sometimes, and you have to find ways of getting around that, really. Because sometimes you have to adapt, I would say, to fit in instead of it being natural.
Yeah, facts.
And what I feel in terms of that is that I should always be able to go into the room as a blank slate. You can say that. So then once you get to experience me, then you can make your own judgment. Do you understand? Because for myself, and I always say this, might not say, I've not said it in the changing room before, but for me, who was born in Jamaica, it's like sometimes I find it hard to understand racism. I actually do, because I never look at anybody as in like black and white to say, because when I grew up, that wasn't a thing. Like, do you know what I mean? This might sound mad, but I weren't aware that I was black. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Because I was in an environment where that was never mentioned, it was never highlighted. And
there was never a difference.
Yeah, there was never a difference. And then, obviously, come to this country, and my first memory of racism was actually on the football pitch. And I was 16 years old. And this was quite a few years after I came in, because I came in quite young. But I never forget the guy actually saying, you know the N-word. Can I swear?
No,
just you effing and that was quite painful, actually, because having a diverse group of friends, and actually where I grew up in Peeps Estate, and different people from different ethnic backgrounds, and the harmony in that environment was amazing. Do you know what I'm saying? Maybe it's because obviously just being in that particular place, everyone came together, and you're just fun, and football actually brought everybody together. So when I actually experienced that on the pitch, it was more like a shock to my system. It was like, that was actually the first time I experienced it, to be honest. And then the second time I experienced it was actually when I was playing for Bradford City, and so I was having a good game, as I would like to say, speaking for myself, and this fan just decided that he's going to try to put me off in some way, shape or form. And he went chocolate drop, ignored him. Then he went midnight, ignored him. Then he went Kevin Hart, and then ignored him. And the last thing he said was Cadbury's. And I stopped and I went, mate, listen, what's wrong with you? You said multiple things and I've ignored you, and you just won't stop. Anyways, a few of their players, I think at the time Andre Gray was there, and a few of their players heard it, and he got escorted out of the stadium, and then the FA called me. They dealt with it quite well, and they asked me what I wanted to happen to him. Did I want a heavy sanction? And to be honest, I turned around and said, you know what, I want him to be educated, because ignorance in all walks of society can be infectious. If you're leading through ignorance and you don't know something, then it's going to drive your actions. But if you can educate someone and they are willing to learn, then I don't want you to take away what probably gives him joy, coming to watch his team.
It's interesting, isn't it, really? Because you spoke about sort of the education piece, and I sort of want to lean on you here at Wynts as well, is how important that education piece is, but also kind of the experiences of society, because I think that when we look at, if we're looking at racism within football, it's not necessarily a football problem, because the people that are in that in football, given sort of on the receiving end, or we have lives outside of it, right? Those people have lives outside. What are your thoughts in terms of how society plays a part in this?
I mean, as you said, like football, in the grand scheme of like racism, football is just like a minor sort of detail towards like the problem. I wouldn't actually say I know where we should potentially look into trying to implement some procedures to eradicate racism. It could be something that could be going on for a very long time, but just teaching people in schools, I think, would be like a place to start essentially. Like for me, I don't know about you guys, but in school I didn't really learn too much about my own community and my people. A lot of communities outside of mine were like pushed to the forefront, and then it's like when we want to embrace our own sort of culture, either in public or just amongst like different groups that we're around, it's seen as like it's not normal essentially to some people, innit? So then that's when they start to behave and react in a certain type of way. But then, like, really and truly, we should be able to walk in wherever we go. We should be able to walk and feel comfortable to be our authentic selves, because like just across the board, every human being should be able to like just feel comfortable and just embrace themselves amongst other people. But
and it's funny how you said about how things are taught sometimes, because I think that's the key point. How things are taught at home, how things are spoken about on the news, how things are taught in school. Because even, again, like I said, if you look at a lot of history that is taught in school, and this was when I was going to school, it was more about what happened in slavery and not about the positive impact that a lot of black people made, whether it be inventions and different things. And that could change the narrative, because, for example, some countries that are not, and I'm going to go back to that. So I would say in this country, they're taking steps to make sure that people are aware, that, and people understand that, listen, everybody can be different, and different skin color, different sex, different sexual orientation, different thing. But when you look at it and you think, if you kind of educate someone about, positive things about a different group of people, then they might look at them differently. Do you understand what I'm saying?
And that's an interesting point, because you use the word narrative, and this year's theme for Black History Month is around reclaiming narrative. So essentially, us having ownership of our own stories. Spoke about in school around what children are taught, and I think that when we look at, say, Black history, certainly when I was in school, it was very much around American history, Black history. So you would learn a lot about, obviously, I say obviously, but you learn about slavery, you learn about people like Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, obviously very influential Black people globally and around the world. But certainly from a UK perspective, there was never that that conversation around kind of what had really Black people within this country done. Exactly. So if I look at Diane Abbott, for example, being the first Black female MP, I didn't learn that in school. I learned that when I was an adult.
And I only learned that from you now.
Yeah, that's one. Just little sort of nuggets like that. So in terms of that kind of narrative and reclaiming those narratives and telling our own stories within schools and education, I think, like you said, that's something that's really important. If we sort of kind of move on to kind of from society, from growing up and stuff, how does that play a role within football then? So as young Black boys coming through the system, how would you say your upbringing or the society that you grew up in has kind of shaped how you wear football wins?
I think see, within football, like the culture is a lot different to what we're used to growing up. So kind of what I was touching on before about like going into spaces and allowing the spaces for you to go into and be in yourself, essentially. When you what example could I bring? I don't know, like your body language. It could be the way that you speak is different to what's predominantly seen and heard within like changing rooms and just around the club and whatnot. And then something negative could happen, and then all of a sudden you get labelled like a bad egg or lazy or attitude problems. Like so many different names, isn't it?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm smiling
We've all heard it.
Yeah, continue.
Yeah, man. I even kind of lost my train of thought there. But even those examples there in itself is tougher than football. It's the culture has sort of changed a bit more as time's gone on. Like I think they kind of embrace culture in general. Like even outside of us, it's like hairstyles was a thing for many different.
Earrings.
Like, do you know what I'm saying? Hair,
Piercings.
your fashion and all of that sort of stuff. They embrace it a bit more, whereas before it was like more, I guess, old school, where they just want you to just come in, you know, be
Plain.
plain Jane,
Yeah.
you know, not flash,
Yeah.
just work hard, but like football is a sport where you should be allowed to sort of express yourself. Like it brings joy. I imagine it's joyful for each and every one of us, especially when we was younger. So it's like there's different elements that we should be able to embrace within football. But I think it's personally improved like slightly over the years, but there's still a long way to go for me.
Yeah, it's an interesting point about authentic self as well, and being able to kind of bring yourself to football, right? And would you say that there's barriers for, say, or has been barriers for young black boys in the game not being able to bring their authentic self, or if they are bringing their authentic self, that's kind of been something that's been challenged, Marshy, for them and been a barrier for them in terms of their progress?
Yes, I think I've got to answer this carefully because my thought on it in terms of the barriers that you face is a little bit different for me because certain things that some people might have experienced, I didn't feel like I experienced that, but I think maybe it was my mentality. Like, so I really feel like your mentality has a lot to do with getting over the challenges that you might face and what you deem to be a hindrance, if that's the right word. I really do feel like there are major challenges that a lot of young black males face, you know, that could actually put them off. But at the same time, I wouldn't just put it down to a footballing experience. I think some people go into the footballing into the footballing environment, and because of what they've experienced outside, it kind of hinders them. Like they it's almost like they're suppressed because they're so scared of what someone might think, or, you know, if I do this, and we go back to, like, you know, the way you're dressing and, you know, might have your earrings in, for example. The mental side of things is like, if you, when you were younger, if you have your earrings in, that's not going to dictate how you play. But depending on your mentality, in terms of if you're fragile already because of everything that you've experienced, and then you've gone in and you've got all the ability in the world, and someone's highlighted something like, you know, cane rolls or earrings, or, I don't know, a sagged pants or trousers, sorry. And you might think straight away before you actually go on that pitch, like, oh, they're not going to sign me, they're not going to do this, they're thinking about me, you know, being this sort of person or that sort of person already. Do you understand what I'm saying? So I think in terms of what you face in football, it's kind of like, I can't relate it only to football sort of thing, because it's more than actually inside of football that actually affects your mental state. You know what I mean? Do you kind of understand what I'm saying? I don't know if I worded that correctly, but yes, we face the challenges and, you know, being stereotyped X, Y, Z, but think about it. You might come out of here, right, and someone will cross the road because you're black. You know what I'm saying? So, for example, let's flip that around. You might be coming in here and someone might cross the road because you're black, and then depend on your mentality, because you might then think, you know what, every white person's like that. And it's not how it works. That's not how it goes. Do you know what I mean? You come in here now and you've experienced that, and all of a sudden you come into a predominantly white environment and you're anxious. You know, depending on your mentality, by the way. I'm not saying everyone feels like that, but we got to think about some of the externals that might affect you coming in. Oh my God, like, you know, are you going to think, is the man... and hypothetically speaking, I'm not saying this is a real scenario. I'm saying we got to look at some of the other things that in the external society that you could take into football that could actually trigger you
Yeah,
or
yeah.
make you feel a certain way, which could possibly hinder you. But I'm not saying those are excuses. It's just that because we're touching on, what the barriers and different things. Because like I said, my own personal experience, I've not really faced that because I'm living it. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. No,
I get that.
it's really interesting,
Yeah.
and I think that as we, we've all played the game for many, many years. I think we're seeing more and more players coming through the system.
Yeah.
We're seeing, we look at the Premier League down to the non-league
Yeah.
level. The representation of black players seems to increase year on year. There's clearly a lot of talent out there, and I think by definition, I believe that those barriers will hopefully coming down as time comes on, as you're seeing more players come through. I guess where we haven't seen movement is when we start going into the management side of football, when we look at, say, the boardroom, for example, when we look at those other areas of football. Now, I've done a few of my coaching badges, I've done my B license, and I've first-hand seen the amount of players or ex-players or just people in general that go on those courses. But at the moment, and for a long, long time, we haven't seen that translation into people getting jobs.
Yeah.
So we can probably count on one hand the managers that we know that have been in the game from the Premier League down to the non-league level. Why is that, Wynts? Why is that representation not quite there when it comes to management or boardroom level?
Honestly, I don't actually know it, but I think the people that do actually get the opportunities are favoured potentially because of their experience and their backgrounds and whatnot. But I genuinely can't put my finger in it, to be honest. So I don't know what you lot would say about that.
And I would second that, to be honest. When it comes to the management thing, obviously I've done a few of my coaching badges, but it's not necessarily something that I would say I fully want to get into. If it lands in my lap, and never say never, anything can happen. But in terms of like you said, making that transition from playing to management, I couldn't really sit here and say I think there's a bias. Do you understand what I'm saying? I can only take the words of people that have gone for a job and not get it, and they're thinking, I'm just as qualified. And I can see what they're saying about, we think that the floor, it should be an even playing field, and that they think that there is some some bias. I feel like, as an individual, if you're qualified, and I smirk because there's other things that we're going to come back on. I think if you're qualified enough for the job, and you could do the job, you should get the job. But like you said, it's just being given a chance, and
I think qualifications is not enough.
Exactly.
That's qualifications is not enough.
That's what I smirked.
But it's interesting because when we look at representation on the pitch, in the game, it's there, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, facts.
So there must be, and again, I don't know if I have the answer to this, there must be a barrier in terms of why that's not translating into jobs, because it's not as if there are not people going through the system in terms of they're going through the badges, etc. So we have a lot of coaches out there that have got a lot of experience, can't get an interview, can't get in front of people.
So are we gonna? So would you put that down to not being favoured because of your skin colour, or?
I don't know, and that's the thing. I'm not necessarily saying this is down to making this about skin colour. But what we can only go by is what we see, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And what we don't see as well. And I think that this conversation has been certainly happening for many years.
100%.
And I know that the PFA are doing great sort of schemes in there to get more representation on the coaching paths. I've done a corporate governance qualification through the PFA to increase representation on boards, etc. But are we, is that translating still into jobs? Are we seeing the benefits of those systems and those programs? Just a question, really, maybe one that can't be answered.
Yeah,
but
it's funny how you said that, because again, like you said, to go back to qualification, I feel like if you're qualified, you should get the opportunity. But again, like you said, having the qualification and going for the interview and stuff like that, because you will get to that process, but you just won't get over the line. and it could have something to do with racism. There's not, you know, I'm not saying it does, but it could do.
Yeah.
But again, that's something that I don't think we'll really ever find out.
Yeah.
That's the honest truth, because you can't go into someone's head
No.
and say, you know, you didn't pick me because I was X, Y, Z,
Mm.
or you didn't do that because you were X, Y, Z. So that's why I think it's a very very touchy one. Do you know what I mean? So I don't think any of us could possibly sit here and say that's exactly why, but we can ask the question.
And I
However,
think that's what needs to be asked.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
I think the question needs to be asked is like, why is this not translated
Yeah.
into jobs within the professional game?
Yeah.
Potentially the non-league game. We could probably count on one hand, if any,
Yeah.
how many black managers we've maybe played for.
It's true.
You know, in our careers, I can say, you know, Gavin Rose here.
Yeah.
You know. But I think certainly a question that I always like to ask in a conversation, I always like to have, and I think what's starting to happen from the conversations that I've had with some people going through the pathway or not going through the pathway is that they don't even want to go through the pathway now.
Yeah, they get disheartened.
Because, they get disheartened. And what do you think of that, Wynts, about possibly it going the other way where people don't even want to go through the qualifications because of not even getting that opportunity?
Yeah, again, it doesn't surprise me, only because, again, when you sort of think about the environment that you're getting into and how it used to be maybe like a decade ago and a long time before that, it doesn't really seem like a role that's for us, essentially, even though like there's many like black managers and coaches that want to get into football and whatnot. But again, this might be a bit of speculation, but when you think about the people that are actually employing people for these roles, they're probably employing people that
They understand.
yeah, they understand, they've
Yeah.
got a link to,
Yeah.
there's some sort of rapport there already.
Yeah.
Whereas they might, like, let's say if I was to go for my badges and whatnot and try and go down that route, I get all the qualifications that I need, and then it's like, where do I go to next?
What's the next step?
Do you
Yeah.
get me? And,
Yeah.
and then I might be fighting against someone that's probably got the same qualifications or less than me, but then they will have that rapport with managers, and they're able to, the chemistry between them is a lot more
Yeah.
different than.
So then, can I ask? It's funny how you said that. So then, okay, you said about the rapport and the chemistry. So is it a lack of understanding of another person, of another color, or another or culture?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You say that.
But not. It's not like it's something that's done on purpose.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
unconscious.
more
yeah.
unconscious.
It's
Yeah.
unconscious, so we're facing like an unconscious bias then.
That's what I'm speculating.
Yeah, and yeah, I think we do face an unconscious bias sometimes. And again, it's not all facts. Some of it is speculation, because we've got to be very careful here.
Yeah.
But, you know, I feel like even speaking to a few people, because I've spoken to a few people, obviously I'm at that age now where I've, you know, played with many players, and I've asked different coaches and different players what they're going to do after football. And, you know, a lot of players, especially black players that I've spoken to, said, you know what, I'm not going to go down that road because I don't feel like I can get a job. Do you understand what I'm saying? So I feel like I think something needs to change, because again, I keep going back to, if you're qualified and you're good enough, I think you should get the opportunity. But also another thing is, when you get the opportunity, do you get the time? You know, because that's the big thing. You know, you can get an opportunity, but is it a real opportunity? You know, are you going to give me 1 or 2 games to turn something around, and not give me 4, 5, 6, 7? Because if you look at the history of a lot of managers, they start slow. Right, some hit the ground running, but some start slow. All right.
So would you say that, again, hypothetically, would you say that there's a lot of barriers anyway, right? The barriers are there anyway, and it doesn't matter who the manager is anyway.
Yeah.
They're under pressure from day one, right?
Yeah.
But potentially, if you've managed to get that opportunity as a black manager, would you say that pressure is heightened, and that there is maybe a feeling that if I don't nail this,
I think
I'm
so.
gone.
I'm going to be honest with you. I've not been a manager, but I definitely think so. That's my honesty. Because I experienced it with a particular manager, which I'm not going to get into, but from he came in, I could see certain things that I'm like, if you don't get this right, you are gone. You know, and again, you know, obviously, that's a tricky one, because then someone could turn around and say that can happen to any manager.
Yeah. No,
Do you know what I'm saying?
which it can, as we know.
This is
as we've seen.
So, you know, as we're on the topic of Black history and the barriers that players face when they're transitioning from playing to management, we have to specifically stay on that topic. But we also got to make everybody aware that we know that it can happen to anyone else.
Of course,
but
absolutely.
I definitely feel that it's more like if you don't get it right, you're cooked.
It's interesting because we obviously don't have a long period of time to discuss these things. We could speak about it all day, but I just wanted to kind of, for the last sort of 5 minutes or so, discuss two points. The first around how far then have we come when it comes to this topic within football? So when it comes to racism within football, when it comes to representation within football, when it comes to leadership within football, how far have we come? And then the last point is around our football club, Dulwich Hamlet, around what does it feel like to play for a club which is so inclusive, that welcomes everyone, that is a very unique football club, that gets 3,500 people through the doors. What does it feel like to be a part of that club? Because when I stepped through the doors, I felt like a strange energy coming through here, a unique and positive energy.
Very unique.
And hence why I've wanted to stay for so long, because of how great this football club is and how they've treated me and how they treat everyone. So wanted to touch on how it feels to play for the football club. But firstly, how far have we really come, Wynts, when it comes to this space of black players within the game?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious. Like when you look back to like when, let's say, it goes as far as like when like John Barnes was playing, the stuff that they had to go through whilst I was playing, the representation, and even in the England team, those days in comparison to now has come a long way. Obviously, like I said earlier, there's still like a long way to go in terms of like how we're treated and opportunities for us and the way that we're seen and etc. But now we've definitely progressed a lot, so I'm happy with the progression so far. But still got a while to go.
I would second that. I think football, especially in this country, has come a long way, and especially when obviously we can see different things that happen in different countries in this era, and you're thinking, wow, like all the fight and things that they put in place to kind of cleanse this industry, and you're still carrying on with that. So for example, you look at countries like, I'll use Spain as a country, one of the best leagues in the world, some of the biggest stars, and they're still experiencing a high level of racism. So one thing I can say, apart from my 2 incidents, I've not really experienced anything, you know what I mean? And I feel like it is a safe environment in this country to play football. In terms of representation, in terms of on the pitch, there are a lot of black players. So the progress is massive. And, as much as, like I said, we're sitting there, we're talking about some of the pitfalls, I can honestly, hand on heart, say, you know what, from what I used to see to now, the progress is massive. I do still think that we need to work on governance within football itself, whether it's at an individual club basis or just across the board. I think governance is a big thing, because I feel like certain things happen in football that would never happen in any other job, So I think we need to work on that. And I think the progress, has been good. And I would say to the FA, continue to do what you're doing and keep making strides.
And obviously, finally, then, Wynts, how do you feel? How's it been since you've signed for the club? And how much do you enjoy playing for the club and the whole kind of what the club represents?
I mean, for me, I've known about like what the club was sort of associated with before I came, but I didn't get to experience it up until I came to Comsway. And since coming here, obviously, like the camaraderie with the staff and the players, it feels a bit different in a positive way. The fans as well have been good during games and even after games and whatnot, and just having conversations with them, people that they're associated with, like with the LGBTQ community, Black History. Like, I've never done anything like this. I haven't even spoken about anything like this at any other club, so that speaks volumes within itself. So just for that to be associated with a club that I'm playing for is something that I'm very proud of, and probably something that I'll be talking about like once I'm retired and whatnot. So I'm happy with what I'm seeing so far.
Great experience. I mean, my first experience was last season playing against a club, and I turned up and there was so many fans, and I'm like, you know what? And it's funny because it's almost like I predicted this. I said after I stopped playing football professionally, there's only two places I'm going to be, either Carshalton or Dulwich.
Yeah.
And I went to Carshalton, and now I'm at Dulwich. And now that I've experienced it, there's no other place that I would rather be than this place, especially at this point in my career. And I think this is, in terms of any player, in terms of whether you are young, especially let's go to the young players, this is a great place to start out because the fan base, the facility, the camaraderie, things that you're exposed to. This is almost like a professional environment. So this place is, and I haven't been to many all the non-league clubs, but in terms of infrastructure and everything and where they're trying to go and the inclusiveness and like you said, staff mingling with players and fans, it's amazing. Amazing.
No, brilliant. And I think, you know, for any player that comes through the club, you know that you're going to be looked after. You know
100%.
that you're welcomed no matter what background you're from. And I think that, you know, even doing this, like you said, is something that is really amazing to have this platform just to speak and share our views and some of our stories is something that, you know, I'm proud of. And, you know, it's been really good to obviously share this conversation with the both of you. So, yeah, thanks for joining us.
No worries. Thank you. Thank you for having us, host.